Welcome everybody to another episode of the Relentless Growth Podcast with myself, Chase, and my good friend Jack here. I feel like we've been kind of real estate investing, construction focused so far, and I want to talk a little bit about balance. So balance of work, so construction, real estate investing, and also faith and family and fitness and all of the things that I would say are probably most important and make everything else doable. How are you doing today, Jack?
Oh, I'm doing great. I'm excited. This is not that construction isn't a fun topic, but this is a fun episode. So I'm excited to dive into this stuff, and it's all a big part of our lives. So I think it'll be a great episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, just before we get started, everybody, please remember to, if you're getting something out of this or you enjoy the podcast, to like or follow the podcast and then share it with anybody else that you think maybe get something out of it. I guess as we continue to grow this, that kind of helps us get a little bit more traction with it. So please share it with other people and again follow along. Let's jump into it. I guess starting off
Well, real
Jack,
real quick,
go ahead.
Chase. We can't forget. We got to start with wins.
That's right. Let's do that first. I almost skipped it again. What do you got? What's a good win for this week for you?
So my win for this week, we're in just outside of Nashville, Tennessee. So it's the heart of the startup of landscaping season, and so we're 6 or 8 months into doing all our own landscape maintenance. And so we got a team of 6 or 7 guys, and they have absolutely crushed it. All of our stuff, in my own opinion, looks way better than everybody else's stuff around us, and so I'm super excited about that. It's an important thing having that first initial presentation when you drive up to a property. So that's my win, is that our landscape team is really crushing it this week.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, this is super important. It's one of those things. It's like really hard to find people to do that well for a reasonable amount of money. So I can see why in-housing it would be a better way to do it, especially at your guys' scale. Man, I think for me, so we're going to delve into fitness and balance all that stuff a little bit. I was feeling a little beat up last week. Like it was just the amount of training and I think a little cold bug and it all kind of caught up with me at once. I'm feeling about 1,000 times better this week. So I'm just happy to be feeling better this week and getting some strength back in the gym and training and stuff like that. So I think just feeling good this week is a big win for me.
That's awesome. That's important.
Yeah, so makes everything a little bit easier, that's for sure. So I guess kind of jumping into the topic, why balance matters. I mean, to you, I guess, I'm sure like me, you've got a lot of stuff going on. How do you view balance and why do you think it's important?
Yeah, I think I read something a couple of years ago that kind of changed how I look at balance. And so there's a guy, author Hal Elrod, who a lot of people have probably read. He wrote The Miracle Morning and The Miracle Equation. And he had a statement in there about balance that I really liked and that has kind of helped me utilize it in my life more. Because I feel like the tendency to think about balance is like, hey, you work a set amount of hours every single day. You're home at the same time every day. You spend the same amount of time on family and work every day, and it's a good balance. And so kind of how he explained balance was as a curve of, hey, there are going to be times in your life, if you have a new baby, you're going to be spending way more time at home, and that's okay. And, if your business is going through a growth period or if there are things you got to deal with, you're going to spend way more time at work during those times, and that's okay. And so I kind of look at it as a long term, whether it's on a quarterly or a yearly basis, of making sure those things balance out, but not putting yourself under the pressure of, hey, I've got to do the perfect balance every single day. And so that has kind of helped me, because it used to be a pretty daunting thing, I think, to try and work that out. But I think that thinking about it like Hal Elrod does has really helped me to better apply it to my life. And I think the good thing about real estate is it allows that. If you've got income producing properties, you might not make as much progress moving forward in other things, but you can afford to take that. If you have stuff going on at home, you can afford to take that time off. You've still got income coming in the door. And so I think kind of real estate lends itself to giving yourself the flexibility. And I think, flexibility, financial freedom, all those things are what really kind of allows you to have that balance. So I'd love to hear your experience with it, but that's kind of what it's meant to me.
Yeah. I I mean, I kind of 100% agree. So that's when I was thinking about this kind of coming up to it. Um, I mean, I really think of it the same way. And I don't, maybe I heard it from somebody else or it's visualized a little bit differently, but it almost the exact same way that I look at it. I think a lot of people very similarly, they think about balance, like everything's got to be even in their life. And in order for them to be well balanced, and I just don't think that's realistic or possible for everybody. And I think there's especially with what we do and being entrepreneurs and all that stuff. I mean, there's definitely been times where I have no choice but to be way out of balance in certain parts of my life. But just realizing that that may only be for a season. But then for me, it's also like really taking the time to think about that regularly and just making sure that like being okay with certain things being out of balance and having to focus more energy and attention in certain parts of my life, but not letting the other stuff get too far behind or too far out of whack. And so it's like for me, it's like I constantly think about like I want to evaluate and I want every part of my life to be as good as possible. But it doesn't do me any good if I'm like killing it in business and I'm killing it in my fitness, but then my marriage suffers. Like I want to make sure that I'm constantly like double checking and making sure that I'm giving, attention to all parts of my life that's important. I know for me personally, like it's the two that have like kind of butted heads the most, I guess, since I've started have been business and fitness. Like it's really easy to go like head down in business and be super, just super pushing on that. But then like my health and my fitness will really start to struggle, or just get put by the wayside. But it like doesn't do you any good if you're successful, but you're super out of shape and unhealthy. And so, uh, trying to like right now, I'm really focused on trying to push on that, but then it eats up a bunch of my time and takes away from the time that I can spend on my business. And so, and just realizing that's okay for right now, and that's where I'm at right now, and then just making sure that I don't let any aspect get too far out of balance. I think is what's important for me, and tracking it or just paying attention to it. I guess regularly is what I would say.
Yeah, I think just to kind of round that one out, I think the awareness thing's the biggest thing. Knowing, when you're out of line, when you got to bring it back, and it's super hard too. And sometimes you got to rely on people around you to tell you. My wife tells me, your wife probably tells you, if you're a little out of balance on stuff, and that's helpful because sometimes it's easy to get sucked in. If you do have something big going on at work and maybe you are tipping that balance where you're neglecting home a little bit too much. And so it's useful to have people around you who are going to call you out on that and kind of get you back to where you need to be.
Yeah, yeah, it's important. It's just something to be aware of, and I think as people grow, um, it's just something they should not just be paying attention to balancing or just paying attention to one or two things. It's all this stuff is super important and making sure that you're keeping a close eye on everything. So I'm gonna dive into the first one here. We haven't touched on it yet, but faith. So I don't think we've talked about this personally too much together, but like faith is a huge part of my life, and it's something that, like, again, kind of looking back when I was first getting started, was probably out of balance and not something that I was paying a lot of as much attention to as I should have. And like now, kind of like hindsight being 2020, looking back, had I spent more time in my faith and it's just in my walk with God and my life probably would have been a little bit less stressful because a lot of the stressors and the stuff that I dealt with early on, like it's still stuff that's very prevalent now, but it's not as big of a deal to me. And a lot of that I think is because of my faith and where I'm at. And so, and I also stuff like with my marriage. I mean, a lot of the stressors and stuff in my relationship with my wife earlier on, was probably stuff that if my faith was a little bit stronger in that area would have been a lot easier. And so I just want to see your take on that and kind of how you fit that in, and maybe even like what you're doing actively to grow in that area.
Yeah, sure. It's a great question. And so I would totally agree with you. So one of the things that I did to actively grow is I joined a group called C12, and so it's a business community of business owners and who are of faith. And so we meet once a month, and it kind of works to integrate your business with your faith. And so yeah, kind of when I started out, I looked very much at like faith as something very important in my life. but it was personal and work was work. And
Mm-hmm.
they kind of operated in separate things. And so, like you said, I would get, things at work would stress me out, and I would bring those home, and that's not fun. And so kind of integrating the two and realizing that, hey, if faith is important to you, it's important to you all the time. And so kind of integrating that into the work and keeping it at a forefront of your mind all the time, man, it makes things so much easier. We've got faith. We know how the story ends, and so whether my day at work today was fantastic or if it was terrible, it doesn't change that endpoint that we're looking forward to. And so knowing that, it really does help with stress. It helps with confidence. It helps give you kind of a mission and a standard that you can measure your day against. And it's not my standard. It's not your standard. It's God's standard. And so it makes decision making, it makes problem solving, it makes it all a little bit easier because you know the goal you're aiming at. And we're not going to hit it all the time. Believe me, I'm the farthest thing from perfect. Every day is a bad day in terms of perfection. But when you've got that standard that you didn't set and that you're working towards, it's a great thing to have to measure yourself against, to say, hey, compared to last year, how are we doing? Am I getting closer? Am I making progress? And so that's kind of how I view it. But it's a big part of my life. It's a big part of my family's life. And just being with I think especially for us, for men, with like-minded individuals. I'm in a couple Bible studies every week where I'm growing with guys together and growing in knowledge of the Bible and faith and how we apply that to our lives. And so I think it's a critical point that, like you said, it's easy to get out of balance. It's easy to concentrate on business and get out of shape, but it's also easy to concentrate out of business and neglect that side of your life. And that's really the most important thing. And so it's a huge component of my life, and it plays a big role every day.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I really like that. I've heard of the C12 group, and I've talked to a couple of people who are either a part of it or have gone through it or known people involved in it. Some I'll have to check out one of these days, but it's not something I've personally delved into yet. Very similarly, though, like one thing that I think that's helped me at least a lot, probably recently here, is a similar like men's small group Bible study where we're kind of like it's above and beyond and just digging into the scripture a little bit harder and then having conversations. Like I really like it because there's a couple guys in there that I think are just super smart and they know a lot more about scripture than I do, and they're a little bit farther along. And I like whenever I can get in a room with guys that know more than me, and can have conversations with that. It's like the guys can go abundance. It's the same thing. Or if I'm, getting around people in construction that know more than me, I think in that same context and faith, it just helps you grow and dig in a little bit more. And then I've really enjoyed the structure of like doing it. The one I've been doing recently, it's a weekly Bible study. It's in person. And it's like, if one of us can't make it and a couple of us are business owners and have really busy schedules, we boot it to the next week. And so it's like it gives a whole new level of like it's usually me and the other business owner. It's like one of the two of us. If it's going to get kicked back to the next week or a different day, it's like one of our fault. But it makes me want to like try to work my schedule around it because I don't want to be the reason that we have to push it back. And so just having that structure around it, I think, helps a lot. And I think for me, a couple things like the where I've seen it the most is this the unnecessary stress. Maybe when feel like I'm strong in my faith, I definitely feel a lot less stress because I think I'm relying more on my faith and knowing that everything's going to be okay and not relying so much on myself. And so that's been very helpful, I think, for me, especially as a business owner and just everyday stress issues.
Well, just to jump in on one last thing, I've got a really good buddy who's an elder at the church I go to, and he says that one of his quotes, it's he would call it unsanctified, but based on the Bible, is that one of the toughest things that God can give people is wealth. And so, kind of being on this journey, money corrupts. It's what it does. We all know people in our lives who have gotten super successful and their family's fallen apart or they've gotten divorced or, the money has serve to disrupt everything else around it. And so I think if you're on whatever a real estate journey, a financial independence journey, I think the temptation is there, and it's only going to get bigger over time. And so having that faith, something that grounds you day after day that you can look back on, is critical, because the temptation is going to be there. It's always going to be there. It's only going to grow. And so I think especially as young people, that's something that we've got to keep our eye on, because it's a problem, and that's just the reality of it. And so, I never want to, I wouldn't say fall victim to that, because it would be my own fault, but it is something to keep front of mind.
100% agree. And it's funny too, because I guess the farther along I get in both journeys, so both my faith and kind of this wealth building journey, and I don't know about you, but I see like a routine pattern of a lot of these guys that I end up getting to know who are very successful also have very strong faith, and that's very important to them. And so it's not surprising in a way. It just kind of makes sense to me. But that's something when I've talked to some younger people who are kind of just getting started out, it's something that you need to be very aware of and realize that it seems like some of that goes hand in hand. Not saying that there's not successful people that don't have faith in God. It's just I personally haven't met one, and maybe it's just because who I'm surround myself around, but I don't think so. I mean, I think it's important for everybody to at least be aware of and pay attention to.
Absolutely.
Cool. Let's move into the next one, which I would say, next most important, definitely above business, but family. And so family, wife and kids. I mean, I don't think I have to ask, but I know for me, and I can assume of you as well, that's super high on your priorities list. But again, I don't know, but I could assume that just like me, it can be tough sometimes to balance that with like my schedule, and especially with all the stuff I have going on. Like my family is like at the top of my priority list, but trying to show that not just in saying it, but also with my schedule and my time sometimes can be difficult. It's a challenge. So how do you balance that, the relationship with your wife and the time with your kids and stuff, and along with trying to run a large successful business? How's that working for you?
Well, sometimes, not well, sometimes, in all honesty, it's a moving target. And I think to kind of pivot the question a little bit, one of the hardest things for me is not being physically present; it's being mentally present. I can get home at the time that I'm supposed to generally, or should, but 30 minutes later, I'm in a different world thinking about, man, I should have done that today, and first thing tomorrow, I've got to call that guy and solve that problem, and so. I think being physically there is super important, obviously, but I think being mentally present and being engaged with your kids and your wife it's the tougher thing, because it's a little more intangible. It's a little bit more difficult to turn off that switch than it is to walk in the door, and so that's what I've been working on over the last year. And my wife would tell you I'm not perfect at it, but I think I'm making progress. But that's the tougher part to me is. Time is time, and time's the most valuable commodity. And so being at home is super important, and being present. And, we both got young kids. And so, even if I get home at a decent hour, I've got 2 hours, 3 hours with the kids, before they go to bed. So it's a limited amount of time. And so being able to utilize that in the right way is something that's weighing heavily on me, and that I continue to work on and struggle through it for sure.
Yeah. I totally agree. And I'd say the struggle is probably the same for me. I mean, dang cell phones now, it's like you got a supercomputer that you can stick in your pocket, which makes it really tempting and easy to get work done anywhere at any time. And so just being aware of that, and that's like the thing I think of and would probably struggle with most is just the presence. Like you said, it's easy to be there, but being fully present is tough. I think about it a lot, and I would say I'm very fortunate in that. like my little circle of where like, we live, where our office is, where the gym is it's all so close together. And so
Mhm.
one cool thing I would say about doing what we do and being an entrepreneur is that like I get to spend a lot of time, sometimes, not always, but sometimes, like throughout the day. So it may not be just I go to work and then I come home, but it's like sometimes I'm fortunate that I get to meet Brenda and Aspen at the gym real quick, and so help check her in daycare while I go, so I can kind of plan my schedule around getting to spend some time with them. And it's not a bunch, but it is good directed time, and so like I'll schedule my workout when Brenda's going to be going to the gym, so I can at least say hi to both of them, and or stuff like little lunches, just the three of us type thing. Um, and then I definitely start work a little bit earlier than most people do, and so that's like if I'm gonna burn it at one end, it's like I'm just gonna get up earlier and come to the office at 5:30 in the morning, so I don't get to see them in the mornings. But my goal is always try to be like off and home by a decent hour, but then just being again more present and trying to like at least at the end of the day when I come home do my best to shut the work down as much as possible. I think that's important. um, I don't know about you. Another thing I've been thinking about more lately is like we've got a lot of travel scheduled, like this summer, for example, and I'll still not stress myself, but it's really easy for me to get in this trap of like I should just be taking everything I'm making right now and like reinvesting it into business or reinvesting it into real estate investing, and trying to balance the fact that like we're early on in our careers and we've got a long time to like grow our businesses and grow wealth and do that kind of stuff. And that you can't, at the end of the day, you can't take it all with you. And so spending some of that money now on experiences is something I'm thinking a lot now. So even if maybe the trip's going to be a little bit more expensive than I like, and I could invest that money in another property or something, but just realizing that I only get the time today, like and Nico's 12, he's about ready to not, want less and less to do with us for a few years. And Aspen, she's 2 and she's going to grow up quick. And so just trying to enjoy the time now, and not push it out to the future, because I think it's going to come quicker than we realize probably.
And we could probably have a whole episode just on that. But have you read Die with Zero?
I haven't. I mean, I've heard a lot about it, but I don't think I've actually read that one yet.
It's a really challenging book for me because it talks about that, and I'm with you. I think that's a valuable component to enjoy it on the way up. Don't wait till you're 75 and plan to do all these things. But that's kind of what the book tells you, and it's like, hey, you should take your bucket list and prioritize it by age. And like, if your goal is to do a triathlon, what you're doing right now, or an Ironman, you can't do that. You could, but it's unlikely that you'll do that after you retire. And so you need to prioritize that closer to the front of your life. And so I think it's a really interesting way to look at what your goals are in life and really lay them out to, hey, maybe it doesn't make a ton of sense to learn to ski when I'm 30 and that's a ton of money or whatever it is you want to do. But if that's what you want to do and it's important to you, maybe that's exactly when you should do it. And I'm probably not totally on board or totally explaining that book well, but it's a really interesting concept of kind of prioritizing those things you want to do with your age and your physical ability. And so it's a really challenging way to look at kind of how you lay out your life trajectory.
I think, like I said, I think it's super important. And then the other thing is like the relationship with my wife and prioritizing that. It's easy to get into the busyness of life and not prioritize that, but trying to do stuff like we've this year prioritizing dates, and especially with young kids, like a date night every single week is not necessarily feasible. And so, but like just trying to, even if it's not a date night, doing a date lunch or something at the gym, or just something where we can get that at least a little bit of one-on-one time. It's not super late at night when I'm falling asleep after the kids have gone to bed. And so just trying to prioritize that stuff, because again, like we were talking about earlier, if those parts of our life go out of balance, it's gonna negatively affect everything. So just spending, being cognizant of it, and then spending the effort and the energy to make those things a priority as well.
Absolutely.
Cool. Next is fitness. So I know that's important to me. I know it's important to you. I'm about 3 weeks out from a half Ironman. And then partially from you giving me a hard time last year when we had lunch, I'm signed up for a full Ironman in August because I think these were your exact words. Hey, it doesn't count until you do a full. So I was like, oh,
It's true.
I guess I should do one. And so it's like fitness is all. I've always been involved in fitness. So I've been exercising since I was probably 12 years old. So for a really long time now. But my fitness has not always been great. I've always prioritized exercise, but similarly, like when I was early on in business, I was not in very good health or in very good shape. I was, going through the motions to exercise, but I was really letting my diet and everything else slack. And so I know for me specifically, like right now, going into a little bit last year and then definitely this year, like really just prioritizing, fitness and being healthy. And then I've really kind of using these like big races because to me they're scary, like especially the first half Ironman I signed up for, and now knowing that like I'm got this full coming up in August, like it really forces me to like even if I don't want to prioritize my fitness and health and stuff like that. So what kind of stuff have you done in the past and anything you're working on right now as far as fitness and health?
Yeah, absolutely. So similar stories. My dad was a wrestling coach in a previous life, and so I grew up doing every sport under the sun. He had me working out when I was 10, and so that was always a big part of my life. And I did college athletics, and so what kind of hit me after college was, what's the motivation? It wasn't really there anymore. There wasn't a competition, there wasn't a game, there wasn't a meet, there wasn't something to get me going. And same thing, I would go to the gym, but was I super productive? No. And so a buddy of mine at work said, "Hey, I'm going to do an Ironman," and I was like, "All right, I'm in." And at that point, I couldn't run a mile straight. Hadn't ridden a bike since I was 10, and had probably never swam in a lane in my life. And so I really didn't know what I was getting myself into, and that was probably a good thing. But there's something about having that big goal out there that forces you to prioritize time and to map it out and to make it possible. And so, yeah, I think whether it's a triathlon and I did the same thing. I did a half and then I did a full Ironman. And so endurance, to me, there's nothing like endurance sports to push you. And it requires, I would say it's like 40% physical and 60% mental. You have to be in shape, but it's more mental than it is physical. And so I think the benefits of endurance sports go way beyond the physical, and they help you in your business. They help you in every aspect of life because they force your mind to push you farther than you think you could go. And so that's the big thing for me. Right now, I'm working on, in all fairness, I was signed up for 2 and I'm going to fail at the first one. So I'll take some accountability on that. But I'm signed up for a 32-mile trail run in November.
Nice.
And so, but I was getting in the same habit. I did the Ironman in 22, and I've run, I've biked, I've done stuff in between, but I haven't stayed as motivated as I should be. Gained a little bit too much weight, ate a little bit too much crap, and so I needed something to motivate me. And so I've still never ran on a trail, but I like running now a little bit, and so I needed something to challenge me. And so I think that's the purpose of it. But just the mental aspect of it, there's nothing like it. I don't listen to music while I run. I don't listen to music while I bike. And it forces you to get out of your own head because it's really tough to do that. I'm so used to stimulus. Like it's tough for me to ride in the car without listening to a podcast or the radio. Like we're so used to input that not having any is, man, I love it. And so it's a big part of kind of what motivates me physically for sure.
Yeah, I love it. And there's other stuff I enjoy too, and some of it I'd gotten into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu a couple years ago, and I trained really hard at that, and I actually really enjoy that, and that's something like I want to continue to do for a long time. It's tough. Like right now, I'm training so much for this Ironman, and trying to lift weights a couple days a week, and so it's like something's got to go. I can only focus on one thing right now, so I'm fully focused on this Ironman training. But I do think having something kind of like either a race or something over your head. I was talking to somebody else about it the other day, and they were a jujitsu guy, and it's kind of the same thing in jujitsu. If you sign up for a competition, you're gonna have to compete against somebody else, kind of like a wrestling match. It's like you're going to train extra hard leading up to that. So I think for me right now, it's these Ironman races, and then I'll probably kind of like you're doing that 32-mile race. Like I'll probably try to pick something every year to do. I do like the endurance training, I think, because it's just so hard. And the competitions are just so like over the top. They, like the full Ironman, just it's hard to even wrap my brain around how it's possible, except for knowing guys like yourself who've done it. But having something like that to kind of push you to train and not skip or not slack on your diet or whatever, I think it's super important. We joked around a little bit, I think, right before the call too. One thing I've struggled with in the past is probably like stress and business related and everything else, but like, not sleeping well, things like that. But there's one thing, like when you're training this hard, like all the time, like sleep is not an issue. Like I do not have problems with my sleep at all. So I joke around when I hear somebody saying they're having a hard time sleeping. I'm like, oh, you should sign up for a triathlon because that won't be an issue. The hard part's staying awake. And so, but again, it's just, and I think a lot of it's that when you complete it, like it feels so good because it's such a hard thing to do and it's painful. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like it doesn't feel good while you're doing it, but afterwards it feels great because it's just such a tough task to complete. So yeah, like I said, fitness is super important. The more I prioritize it, the more I realize how important it is and how much more like I want to try to keep that as one of my major priorities and keep it in line.
Oh, absolutely. And I feel like kind of rolling into our next topic, which is kind of strategies for balance. And then I feel like it rolls into tips for, fitting workouts into a busy schedule, like time blocking and time management. When you try and do all these things, it becomes a big deal. And my favorite tactic, which is certainly not for everyone, but is just wake up earlier than everybody else on the planet. And that's my favorite way to fit things into the day. And so my wife is not a big fan of it, but my alarm goes off every morning at 3:58. And so
I got to step it up. You wake up even earlier than I do.
Yeah, come on, man. It's really 4, but 3:58 sounds way cooler than 4. So. Yeah. So, but it lets you to it kind of brings together a lot of things we've talked about. I have time to read the Bible in the morning. I have time to work out. I have time. There's some mornings where, we're talking about work-life balance where I may work the whole 4 hours before work starts if there's something big going on. But it gives you this uninterrupted time period. It's still dark outside. No one else is up. No one else is calling you. And man, I wouldn't trade my mornings for anything. If I wake up at 5 instead of 4, I feel like I don't have enough time to get everything done, as stupid as that sounds. And so the last couple of years have they morphed into earlier and earlier and earlier. And I love mornings. I think it's the greatest thing in the world. And so that's my biggest strategy for time management, is just really utilizing that time.
Dude, I think waking up early is the biggest hack that you can possibly do. I mean, when it comes to getting a bunch of stuff done and be productive and all that, I totally agree. I was joking around because I wasn't feeling well last week, and so I was sleeping in till 5, and so it was like that was my people think sleeping in till 9 or 10 or whatever. For me, if I'm getting up at 5, it's sleeping in for me. It's like a bunch of extra rest, and I only need to do that for a little bit, and I go back to waking up early. Yeah, same thing. I love getting up early, and then I go back and forth. I honestly, I think in a perfect world, it would be nice to go straight to the gym at 4:30 in the morning, knock my workout in. But for me, I love that first part of the morning because it's that uninterrupted time. And so whether I'm working on a Bible study or I've got deep work that I'm trying to do on the business, or I've got just tasks that I need to get caught up on, I personally feel like I can get an entire day's worth of work done by 7:30 in the morning, versus if I were to start work at 8:30 or 9, it's like it gets really difficult for me to get that even close to the same amount done because of all the interruptions that start coming in. So I'm a huge proponent of getting up early and getting started like that. The only additional I would say that I'm doing this time around for the Ironman training that I hadn't done in the past, and it's been helpful for me, is I am time blocking or scheduling out my workouts like in week chunks. And so every Sunday I've been placing my workouts like in my calendar and then kind of scheduling that week around it. It's been super helpful for me to be more consistent, because what I was doing, I think last year when I was training for those half Ironmans, is it's like I had my workout schedule and then I had my calendar schedule, but then my calendar would get filled up and it'd be like, oh, I'm just gonna skip that workout, or I'm gonna cut this one short, or I'm gonna skip. And so I just wasn't getting the volume done this time around, just being really like ahead of time. And if there's like a day where I'm too busy and I can't get both workouts in, it's like shifting the workouts around and filling them in on days where I can get them done. So that I would say that waking up early and then the time blocking are probably the two biggest ones for me as far as strategy. And then I guess the only thing I would add, this was something I definitely stole from somebody else, but I can't remember who said it. But like one thing I try to do is I try to prioritize. So even before I put the workouts in, prioritizing those other parts of my life that are super important. So like having that Bible study on the calendar first, and having Brendan and I do like a weekly sync meeting for just the two of us, having that in there, and then trying to plan out some of the family trips and some of those family times. So, and then the fitness stuff goes into my calendar, and then the work kind of fills around that. So I try to think about my calendar that way and prioritizing it by what should be most important.
No, I love that. I live and die by my calendar. And when I was training for the Ironman, I did the exact same thing, where you got to put them in, and it's so much harder to skip it if you write out a plan, even if it's a week ahead. If you're making it up day by day, it's super easy to shift. Today should probably be a rest day. We all make those justifications in our head, but yeah, putting it on the calendar, there's just something about it that seeing it there makes you, in my opinion, infinitely more likely to complete it. So I love that tip. That's a great one.
Cool. What about goals and setting goals and staying aligned? Anything else actionable that you're doing on that stuff?
Yeah, obviously we, so in the business wise, I think you're getting into it. We run the EOS system from a business perspective. And so that we set quarterly rocks, yearly goals, big 3 to 5 year goals, 7-year goals. And so that's kind of our system. And, we could probably do a whole deep dive on kind of a business management system. But that's kind of what we do business wise. But personally, whatever the part of your life is, I think goals are super important. But I think how you go about them is way more important than the goal. And like we're talking about with an Ironman, if we both said we want to do an Ironman and then we sit there for 6 months and it comes up and it's race day, we're not going to do anything. We're not going to finish. And so combining that goal with a plan to get there, and kind of the thing that I've learned over the years, because my dad is a huge proponent of goals, always has been. If you read Gary Keller's book, The One Thing, I think the thing I have learned is the fewer goals, the better. I think it's always tempting to set 15 to start the year, and then at least for me, a couple months in, I'm so daunted by the list of 15 that you end up pivoting from all of them. But I think having as few as possible and really keeping them front of mind. I had the discussion with the leader of my C12 group the other day about how, I've got a business coach. I'm in C12. I'm in GoPods through GoBundance. And, I've got different goals and different priorities in each one. And the reality is there's too much stuff going on. And so we had a whole conversation on the topic of to really get the most out of all the ways you're getting information, you need to sync those goals and you need to be working on the same things in all those different avenues to really get the most out of it. And so that's something. So I'm I certainly don't have it figured out. We'll never have it figured out. That's something I was talking about yesterday. So I think just having a few goals and using all of your resources to accomplish them is the key, and writing them down. I mean, I think the Harvard study bears that out, that if you write something down, you're, 1,000% more likely to accomplish it. But I think writing them down, having just a couple of them, and then knowing them by heart, keeping them front of mind anytime you're with a group of people who could help, I think is kind of what I view as the keys.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I feel like for me, goal setting is kind of it was probably something that was fairly new to me when I joined GoBundance a couple years ago, and so I feel like GoBundance is what really gave me the kickstart to that, especially the one sheet, right? But I would agree. Like I think earlier on, my tendency was try to set a bunch, like in every area of my life, but it's just easy for a lot of them to get lost in translation. And so I think especially like with the one sheet, just doing less. So kind of less is more, maybe one or two in each area, but then really doing a good job to try to stick to those. I think it's been important. And maybe in a similar spot where like, yeah, we're doing EOS now. So I've got goals through EOS. I've got goals on my one sheet. And so just trying to distill them down and make sure that there's not too many and that they're achievable. But then also like that they're big enough that they're pushing you. And so that's one thing I think I've cut myself short on in some stuff in the past, and really like you want them to be measurable and achievable, but you still want them to be enough of a stretch that, they're difficult to get to. I feel like if you're setting your year end goals and you're hitting them halfway through the year, you probably didn't push yourself enough on those goals. One thing I've kind of changed up this year, which I'm enjoying, I can honestly say like I haven't updated my one sheet since like the beginning of the year. I should probably check on that because we're getting into the year, and I'll probably the next event that I'm scheduled to go to is probably when I'll jump on there and update it, see how I'm doing with those. But one thing I did is I spent the time earlier on this year or last year, and I wrote kind of like, and I didn't do it exactly how the vision book probably says to, but I theoretically did the same thing. So I wrote out a vision for my life. And then I took some of those most important goals and kind of wrote those down as well. And then I try to spend time every day and review that. And so for me, that really keeps it top of mind for me, and something that I'm looking at regularly, opposed to setting these goals and they kind of forget what they are, not keeping close track on them. Another thing that and this kind of probably plays to both the strategy and the goal setting. One thing that I had started doing this year was like just some not like daily non-negotiable things. And so like, for example, one of those is read my goals every day. And so I've got 5 or 6 things that it's like, it's a daily every day, and none of them take that long. There's a couple minutes each, but they're all kind of moving me in the right direction. And then if it's something that I have on there that have no problem hitting every single day, just removing. So for example, one was like 45 minutes of exercise. Like I'm doing at least, but usually a lot more than 45 minutes of exercise every day. So it's just, I took that one off completely and replaced it with something else that's going to move me in the direction I want to go. But just making sure I'm hitting those every day. And then I combine that like with my to-do list. So I've got those non-negotiable things I do every day. And then I've got my 3 to 5 key tasks that I want to achieve each day, and really just trying to doing my best to execute on all those things every single day. And one of them being review my goals daily. So that's been pretty powerful for me this year, I think.
Yeah, honestly, I've done that in the past. I didn't do that this year, and I think I'm probably worse off for it. So I think that's a good reminder. I think having them in front of you that's like the first step, and I think the more aware you are, the more, at least in the past for me, the more you'll realize the opportunities when they come up. The more your goals are front of mind, there's a lot of things that happen every day that we can utilize that we don't. And so I think that's a really good point. And I think if anybody had a takeaway from the call, I think it's that, reviewing those goals every day. I think that's a superpower that probably most people don't take advantage of.
Yeah. I think it's very powerful for sure. Cool. Anything else you want to touch on today? I feel like that was a really good call.
No, this was great. I love talking through this stuff. This is all the fun stuff. No, I just I'll go back to, if I had to pick my favorite thing it's waking up early. I think that gives you the power to push your faith forward, push your fitness forward. Have the ability to work on your business when you're not distracted by the world, and so that's really my key. That's how every day starts, and it's my favorite part of the day. So that's if I were to encourage people to do anything, it would be that.
It's huge. It's super important, and I balance it because I know sleep is very important. It's like
Yeah,
it's like healthy for you, but like waking up early, it's just to me, it's a non. Like I said, I forget. It's just not. It's not normal, but it's super powerful. I think that the waking up early thing to get stuff done is super important, and I think just having those clear goals and then reviewing them in some format often, I think that's something that's driving me the direction that I want to go, and just making sure it's done on a regular basis.
I love that. No, I love this call. I think this was productive for me. I got a lot out of it. So if nobody else does, I'm better served for it. So I appreciate it.
Cool. That's just as important. Well, again, for those of you out there listening, if you got something out of it, or if you enjoy this, please like and share it with other people, and we'll see you next week.